Like many of you, I'm one of the lucky people. I was born to a family where education was pervasive. I'm a third-generation PhD, a daughter of two academics. In my childhood, I played around in my father's university lab. So it was taken for granted that I attend some of the best universities, which in turn opened the door to a world of opportunity. Unfortunately, most of the people in the world are not so lucky. In some parts of the world, for example, South Africa, education is just not readily accessible. In South Africa, the educational system was constructed in the days of apartheid for the white minority. And as a consequence, today there's just not enough spots for the many more people who want and deserve a high-quality education. That scarcity led to a crisis in January of this year at the University of Johannesburg. There were a handful of positions left open from the standard admissions process, and the night before they were supposed to open that for registration, thousands of people lined up outside the gate, in a line a mile long, hoping to be first in line to get one of those positions. When the gates opened, there was a stampede, and 20 people were injured, and one woman died. She was a mother who gave her life trying to get her son a chance at a better life.
The higher education system failed Patrick, Debbie, and Well, exactly as it is failing millions of potential students, millions that graduate high school, millions that are qualified for higher education, millions that want to study, yet cannot access, for various reasons. First, financial. Universities are expensive. We all know it. In large parts of the world, higher education is unattainable for an average citizen. This is probably the biggest problem facing our society. Higher education stopped being a right for all and became a privilege for the few. Second, cultural. Students who are qualified for higher education, can afford, want to study, cannot. Because it is not decent, it is not a place for a woman. This is the story of countless women in Africa, for example, prevented from higher education because of cultural barriers. And here comes the third reason. UNESCO stated that in 2025, 100 million students will be deprived from higher education simply because there will not be enough seats to accommodate them, to meet the demand. They will take a placement test. They will pass it. But they still won't have access because there are no places available.
I want to talk a little bit about really just how I got started. And some of y'all might know, about 5 years ago, I was an analyst at a hedge fund. And I was in Boston, and I was tutoring my cousins in New Orleans remotely. And I started putting the first YouTube videos up really just as kind of a nice-to-have, just kind of a supplement for my cousins, something that might give them a refresher or something. And as soon as I put those first YouTube videos up, something interesting happened. Actually, a bunch of interesting things happened. The first was the feedback from my cousins. They told me that they preferred me on YouTube than in person. And once you get over the backhanded nature of that, there was actually something very profound there. They were saying that they preferred the automated version of their cousin to their cousin. At first, it's very unintuitive, but when you actually think about it from their point of view, it makes a ton of sense. You have this situation where now they can pause and repeat their cousin. Now they can, without feeling like they're wasting my time. They could, if they have to review something that they should have learned a couple of weeks ago or maybe a couple of years ago, they don't have to be embarrassed and ask their cousin. They can just watch those videos. If they're bored, they can go ahead. They can watch it at their own time, at their own pace. And probably the least appreciated, I guess, aspect of this is the notion that the very first time that you're trying to get your brain around a new concept, the very last thing you need is another human being saying, "Do you understand this?" And that's what was happening with the interaction with my cousins before, and now they could just do it kind of in the intimacy of their own room. The other thing that happened is, I put them on YouTube just for the, I saw no reason to make it private, so I let other people watch it. And then people started stumbling on it. And I started getting some comments and some letters and all sorts of kind of feedback from random people around the world. And these are just a few. This is actually from one of the original calculus videos. And someone wrote just on YouTube, it was a YouTube comment. First time I smiled doing a derivative. And let's pause here. This person did a derivative, and then they smiled. And then in response to that same comment, this is on the thread, you could go on YouTube and look at these comments. Someone else wrote, same thing here. I actually got a natural high and a good mood for the entire day. Since I remember seeing all of this matrix text in class, and here I'm all like, I know Kung Fu. And we got a lot of feedback along those lines. It's clearly it was helping people. But then as the viewership kept growing and kept growing, I started getting letters from people, and it was starting to become clear that it was actually more than just a nice to have. This is just an excerpt from one of those letters. My 12-year-old son has autism and has had a terrible time with math. We have tried everything, viewed everything, bought everything. We stumbled on your video on decimals, and it got through. Then we went on to the dreaded fractions. Again, he got it. We could not believe it. He is so excited. And so you can imagine, here I was, an analyst at a hedge fund. It was very strange for me to do something of social value.
That's me. I was going to say holding my first abacus, but actually holding what my father would consider an ample substitute to an iPad. So one thing that I took from home is this notion that educators don't necessarily have to teach. Instead, they can provide an environment and resources that tease out your natural ability to learn on your own. Self-study, self-exploration, self-empowerment, these are the virtues of a great education.
Now, before we go too far into this, I'd like to spend some time discussing some key ideas. What are some key ideas that makes all of this work? One idea is active learning. The idea here is rather than have students walk into class, watch lectures, we replace this with what we call lessons. Lessons are interleaved sequences of videos and interactive exercises. So a student might watch a 5-7-minute video and follow that with an interactive exercise. Think of this as the ultimate Socratization of education. You teach by asking questions. And this is a form of learning called active learning, and really promoted by a very early paper in 1972 by Craig and Lockhart, where they said and discovered that learning and retention really relate strongly to the depth of mental processing. Students learn much better when they are interacting with the material. The second idea is self-pacing. Now, when I went to a lecture hall, and if you were like me, by the 5th minute, I would lose the professor. I wasn't all that smart, and I would be scrambling, taking notes, and then I would lose the lecturer for the rest of the hour. Instead, wouldn't it be nice with online technologies, we offer videos and interactive engagements to students? They can hit the pause button. They can rewind the professor. Heck, they can even mute the professor. So this form of self-pacing can be very helpful to learning. The third idea that we have is instant feedback. With instant feedback, the computer grades exercises. I mean, how else do you teach 150,000 students? Your computer is grading all the exercises. And we've all submitted homeworks, and your grades come back 2 weeks later. You've forgotten all about it. I don't think I've still received some of my homeworks from my undergraduate days. Some are never graded. So with instant feedback, students can try to apply answers. If they get it wrong, they can get instant feedback. They can try it again and try it again. And this really becomes much more engaging. They get the instant feedback. And this little green check mark that you see here is becoming somewhat of a cult symbol at edX. The learners are telling us that they go to bed at night dreaming of the green check mark. In fact, one of our learners who took the circuits course early last year, he then went on to take a software course from Berkeley at the end of the year. And this is what the learner had to say on our discussion board when he just started that course about the green check mark. Oh God, have I missed you. When's the last time you've seen students posting comments like this about homework? My colleague Ed Bertschinger, who heads up the physics department at MIT, has this to say about instant feedback. He indicated that instant feedback turns teaching moments into learning outcomes. The next big idea is gamification. All learners engage really well with interactive videos and so on. They would sit down and shoot alien spaceships all day long till they get it. So we apply these gamification techniques to learning, and we can build these online laboratories. How do you teach creativity? How do you teach design? We can do this through online labs and use computing power to build these online labs. So as this little video shows here, you can engage students much like they designed with Legos. So here the learners are building a circuit with Lego-like ease. And this can also be graded by the computer. Fifth is peer learning. So here, we use discussion forums and discussions and Facebook-like interaction, not as a distraction, but to really help students learn. Let me tell you a story. When we did our circuits course with the 155,000 students, I didn't sleep for 3 nights leading up to the launch of the course. I told my TAs, okay, 7 by 24, we're going to be up monitoring the forum, answering questions. I had answered questions for 100 students. How do you do that for 150,000? So one night, I'm sitting up there, 2 a.m. at night, and I think there was this question from a student from Pakistan. And he asked a question, and I said, okay, let me go type up an answer. I don't type all that fast, and I begin typing up the answer. And before I can finish, another student from Egypt popped in with an answer. Not quite right, so I'm fixing the answer. And before I can finish, a student from the US had popped in with a different answer. And then I sat back fascinated. Boom, 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 boom. The students were discussing and interacting with each other, and by 4 a.m. that night, I'm totally fascinated, having this epiphany. By 4 a.m. in the morning, they had discovered the right answer. And all I had to do was go and bless it, good answer. So this is absolutely amazing, where students are learning from each other, and they're telling us that they are learning by teaching.
We now have on the order of 2,200 videos covering everything from basic arithmetic all the way to vector calculus and some of the stuff that you saw up there. We have a million students a month using the site, watching on the order of 100 to 200,000 videos a day.
So at edX and a number of other organizations, we are applying these technologies to education through Moocs to really increase access to education. And you heard of this example where when we launched our very first course, and this was an MIT Hard Circuits and Electronics course about a year and a half ago, 155,000 students from 162 countries enrolled in this course. And we had no marketing budget. Now, 155,000 is a big number. This number is bigger than the total number of alumni of MIT in its 150-year history. 7,200 students passed the course, and this was a hard course. 7,200 is also a big number. If I were to teach at MIT 2 semesters every year, I would have to teach for 40 years before I could teach this many students.
But it's not just about the numbers. It's also about the people. Whether it's Akash, who comes from a small town in India and would never have access, in this case, to a Stanford quality course and would never be able to afford it. Or Jenny, who is a single mother of 2 and wants to hone her skills so that she can go back and complete her master's degree. Or Ryan, who can't go to school because his immune-deficient daughter can't be risked to have germs come into the house, so he couldn't leave the house. I'm really glad to say, recently we've been in correspondence with Ryan, that this story had a happy ending. Baby Shannon, you can see her on the left, is doing much better now, and Ryan got a job by taking some of our courses. Of course, we all know as educators that students don't learn by sitting and passively watching videos. Perhaps one of the biggest components of this effort is that we need to have students practice with the material and really in order to really understand it. There's been a range of studies that demonstrate the importance of this. This one that appeared in Science last year, for example, demonstrates that even simple retrieval practice, where students are just supposed to repeat what they already learned, gives considerably improved results on various achievement tests down the line than many other educational interventions. We've tried to build in retrieval practice into the platform as well as other forms of practice in many ways. For example, even our videos are not just videos. Every few minutes, the video pauses and the students get asked a question.
And it's a little bit ironic that we set about to disrupt traditional education, and in doing so, we ended up making our online class much more like a traditional college class than other online classes. Most online classes, the videos are always available. You can watch them anytime you want. But if you can do it anytime, it means you can do it tomorrow. And if you can do it tomorrow, well, you may not ever get around to it. So we brought back the innovation of having due dates. You could watch the videos anytime you wanted during the week, but at the end of the week, you had to get the homework done. This motivated the students to keep going, and it also meant that everybody was working on the same thing at the same time. So if you went into a discussion forum, you could get an answer from a peer within minutes. Now I'll show you some of the forums, most of which were self-organized by the students themselves.
Let me tell you a story. When my daughter turned 13, became a teenager, she stopped speaking English. She began speaking this new language. I call it Teenlish. It's a digital language. It's got two sounds, a grunt and a silence. Honey, come over for dinner. Did you hear me? Silence. Can you listen to me? So we had a real issue with communicating, and we were just not communicating. Until one day I had this epiphany. I texted her. I got an instant response. I said, no, that must have been by accident. She must have thought, it's some friend of hers calling her. Then I texted her again. Boom, another response. I said, this is great. And so since then, our life has changed. I text her, she responds. It's just been absolutely great. So our millennial generation is built differently. Now, I'm older. I mean, my youthful looks might belie that, but I'm not in the I'm not in the millennial generation. But our kids are really different. The millennial generation is completely comfortable with online technology, so why are we fighting it in the classroom? Let's not fight it, let's embrace it. In fact, I believe, I have two fat thumbs, I can't text very well, but I'm willing to bet that with evolution, our kids and their grandchildren will develop really, really little itty-bitty thumbs to text much better. The evolution will fix all of that stuff. But so why don't we embrace technology, embrace the millennial generations, natural predilections, and really think about creating these online technologies, blend them into their lives. So here's what we can do. So rather than driving our kids into a classroom, herding them out there at 8 o'clock in the morning, I hated going to class at 8 o'clock in the morning. So why are we forcing our kids to do that? So instead what you do is you have them watch videos and do interactive exercises in the comfort of their dorm rooms, in their bedroom, in the dining room, in the bathroom, wherever they're most creative. Then they come into the classroom for some in-person interaction. They can have discussions among themselves, they can solve problems together, they can work with the professor and have the professor answer their questions.
So here are my 4 sentences then. Remoteness affects the quality of education. Educational technology should be introduced into remote areas first and other areas later. Values are acquired. Doctrine and dogma are imposed. The two opposing mechanisms. And learning is most likely a self-organizing system. If you put all the 4 together, then it gives, according to me, it gives us a goal, a vision for educational technology. And educational technology and pedagogy that is digital, automatic, fault-tolerant, minimally invasive, connected, and self-organized. As educationists, we've never asked for technology. We keep borrowing it. PowerPoint is supposed to be considered a great educational technology, but it was not meant for education. It was meant for making boardroom presentations. We borrowed it. Video conferencing, the personal computer itself. I think it's time that educationists made their own specs. And I have such a set of specs. This is a brief look at that. And such a set of specs should produce technology to address remoteness, values, and violence. So I thought I'd give it a name. Why don't we call it out-doctrination? And could this be a goal for educational technology in the future. So I want to leave that as a thought with you.
And the vision of the tutoring thing, the idea there is, if I'm confused about a topic, somehow right in user interface, I'd find people who are volunteering, maybe see their reputation, and I could schedule and connect up with those people.
Absolutely, and this is something that I recommend everyone in this audience to do is those dashboards that teachers have, you can go log in right now and you can essentially become a coach for your kids, your nephews, your cousins, or maybe some kids at the Boys and Girls Club. And yeah, you can start becoming a mentor or tutor really immediately, but yeah, it's all there.
Well, it's amazing. I think you've just got a glimpse of the future of education. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So to summarize, if we could offer a top quality education to everyone around the world for free, what would that do? 3 things. First, it would establish education as a fundamental human right, where anyone around the world with the ability and the motivation could get the skills that they need to make a better life for themselves, their families, and their communities. Second, it would enable lifelong learning. It's a shame that for so many people, learning stops when we finish high school or when we finish college. By having this amazing content be available, we would be able to learn something new every time we wanted, whether it's just to expand our minds or to change our lives. And finally, this would enable a wave of innovation, because amazing talent can be found anywhere. Maybe the next Albert Einstein or the next Steve Jobs is living somewhere in a remote village in Africa. And if we could offer that person an education, they would be able to come up with the next big idea and make the world a better place for all of us. Thank you very much.